Today, we have Rita White and Celeste Melville, who you probably all know, but they did a medical mission down to Guatemala, and today seems like a great day to go to Guatemala where the sun is shining and all of that. So they're going to tell us about not only the medical mission, the trip that they did, but then some fun that they had after, and just kind of take us down to another part of the country. So thank you very much.
Okay, well, we're not in the habit of doing this kind of thing, so I hope you'll excuse any non-professionalism. I think what we're going to basically do is try to present a slideshow. There's pictures, and talk about them a little bit. If you have any questions, feel free to do it.
Feel free to interrupt us.
Yeah, absolutely, or correct us, because we do have some experts in the audience, I know that, over there in the corner. And if there's some time left afterwards, we can talk about history of Guatemala a little bit.
It's fascinating.
It's pretty fascinating, and I would say it's more tumultuous than any history of any country I've ever read.
Oh, yeah.
So, we can do that a little bit. All right, well, just to get started real quick, not to waste too much time, there's a shot of Guatemala. You can kind of see that the north is interesting in that there's practically nothing up there. I have no idea, who knows? I think there might be jungle with ruins and all kinds of things. We were down here, in fact, we did the medical mission around this area, and then over Lake Atitlan, let's see if I can use this pointer here, okay. Over there is where we did our recreation, which was right in the middle of Mayan country. So this was more, I suggest just pay a little attention to the dress. It's, the clothing, it's not too different than what you'd expect just normal people running around in a third world country to wear, whereas when we get over here, you'll see some absolutely wonderful traditional dress that everybody, well, 99% of the women wear, and
a few of the men
maybe
wear
25%, so, this is one of the few places where the Chinese haven't taken over and just sold their cheap garments to everybody. So, we'll zoom in here a little bit. This is the lower half of the country, and we were, let's see, where was it?
Nueva Santa Rosa.
Oh, right
we
here.
flew into Guatemala City and then took our bus down to Los Esclavos, and that's where our hotel was. And every day we would travel by the military bus up to Nueva Santa Rosa. And Nueva Santa Rosa is the very center of the Americas. There's actually a plaque right in Nueva Santa Rosa that says this is the center of the Americas. So it's a very, very poor region. And we stayed in a hotel in Los Esclavos, then we would go through Cuilapa, pick up a couple of the local volunteers, and it was about a 45-minute drive up to Nueva Santa Rosa to the clinic.
And then after that, when it was over with, just because we have this map up here now, we won't have it later, we went with the whole crowd back to Guatemala. A lot of them took a plane home. And then we had, because I'd been here 3 years ago, I had some contacts and arranged for a driver to come and pick us up in Guatemala City. And then I'm not sure which road, I guess it was probably this one,
Yeah.
that we took to down to Santiago de Atitlan here. And so that was pretty easy. We could have taken chicken buses, but it probably would have wasted another 2 days.
And maybe getting robbed.
Who knows? Would have been cheaper though.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is our hotel. By the way, maybe you should tell a little bit about the organization since you discovered it.
Well, he inspired me. He's done so many different missions in so many different parts of the world, and I was in touch with an old friend of mine from back east. I'm from upstate New York, and Facebook reconnected me with a lot of people, and she was one of them that I got back in touch with, and she just recently retired from Glens Falls Hospital. I actually worked there for 2 years when I was in my early 20s. And she's the president of the foundation there that does this clinic twice a year. And they've been doing it, I think, 19 years. I'm not exactly sure that's correct, but they go twice a year, spring and fall, and they have all kinds of connections there now. So they have a permanent storage place to leave equipment, but they bring a lot of stuff down with them each time they come down. My daughter was supposed to go with us on this trip, but at the last minute she had to bail. But she's doing the spring trip this year.
Yeah, it's 1 week, and if any of you are interested, probably could, connect you up. So it was, I think, $600 to them, to the mission, and that included with that was
The hotel and
this
all that.
hotel here, and breakfast and dinner. And so we really didn't have to pay for much else, except for the airplane, of course. But this is just a few shots. I mean, you'll see, we love this, the plants and stuff. You'll probably see too much of that
Yeah.
in the slideshow. But anyway, here's an example. And
I'll tell you what, after 10 hours of working up in Nueva Santa Rosa, and we were up at 6 a.m. on the bus by 7, breakfast between 6 and 7, on the bus by 7, up there to open the clinic by 8, and back on the bus after dark, and dinner, and put your feet in that swimming pool.
this was the view from our little balcony.
And this is the Los Esclavos River. The town, the river, the bridge are all named Los Esclavos. It's the slaves. And it's named after the people that the Spanish enslaved early, in their early history.
The indigenous people.
Yes.
And up here, just to orient yourself a little bit, away, just over the other side of that road there is the,
That's the Pan American Highway.
and then just over on the side of that is this ancient bridge, which we have at least one picture of. No, it's not.
There we go.
Okay. And
So after the first night we were there, everybody wanted to walk over and see the old bridge, and these guys were, they were pretty serious. I mean, by the end of the week, they were like kind of our buddies, but in the beginning, they were just,
they were our armed guards, by the way.
yes.
And, well,
So anywhere we walked in Los Esclavos, they went with us.
this is an ancient bridge. What's the oldest in where? That's the country, the oldest bridge in the country?
I think it probably in the Americas. It's from the 1500s, I think. And that's called the Los Esclavos Bridge. And there is some legends around it that something about they were trying to build this bridge and it wasn't getting built, and somebody went to sleep at night, and overnight it became built, but he went back on the deal that he made with the god that built it. So they took out a chunk of it, and every time they tried to repair it, the chunk would fall back out because it was cursed.
What was the need for the armed guards?
Oh, they came with the bus.
They came with the bus.
For a
We
reason.
have,
But there
We
had to
have-
be some acknowledged risk.
Oh, yeah.
well, yes, I mean, there are armed guards everywhere in Guatemala. You'll see them outside of banks, you'll see them outside of grocery stores, you'll see a picture of an armed guard in the grocery store where we went to during our time in Nueva Santa Rosa. But this is by the end of the trip, we were all taking pictures with them.
That was our bus.
That was the military
The
bus.
bus was known to us by the government, and it's by far the most luxurious bus I've ever seen in my life.
Very nice.
So not to belabor the point, but was the tension political based, or gangs, or drugs, or what was the basis of the risk?
The risk is more criminal
Ah,
rather than political.
More
But still, we had all these.
Criminal for crime. There's a rampant crime. The poverty is so.
understood.
Well, the other thing that's happened also is that with the push in Mexico to remove the cartels, they have moved down into Guatemala. So there's a lot of drug stuff going on.
Yeah.
So I think we had 6 or 8 of them, something like that.
Yeah, they just came with a bus.
Wow.
And it was nice to have them, I'll tell you, we were all kind of like, do we really need all these guys with automatic weapons? You know, but they greased the wheels. There was road construction on the way up there and miles, and you might wait for 2 hours behind this road construction to get through. And that greased the wheels, and we would bypass everybody and get through. And the reason that I know was only because of the mission was because the last day we waited an hour on the way up and an hour on the way back because we didn't have the clinic open, we were wrapping it up.
Where were your people from that you worked with?
Mostly from New York.
Mostly from New York. They were from all over. There was a couple from, I'm hitchhiking out on the Pan American Highway. That is the Pan American Highway that went right through. This was one of our leaders, Wendy Steinhecker, and she is out of Glens Falls, New York.
This is the other.
And Chung was a doctor of pharmacy and had a group of students there, and he was the other leader of our group in the tuk-tuk there.
There's the tuk-tuk, it'll handle about 3 people in the back and 1 in the front, which is probably not legal in the bank rules. I think they do. And so these things are all over the place. They're very cheap. You know, in other words, like it's a taxi, but very inexpensive. And
It's a matter of a few cents, really.
I inquired as to how much they cost new, just for people who care about things like that. $6,000. It's actually it's like a motor scooter because they've got handlebars with the same kind of shifting and everything.
They're two-cycle.
Some of them they're 2-cycle, and some of them now have signs in the back saying that they're 4-cycle. So you know, it's a little better. Electric would be even better yet. Okay, so here we are arriving. In order, they had to choose and find a place to do this mission, which you'll see what it is in a second. But there was all kinds of material and everything stored somewhere else. So we spent a day setting that up and then getting ready for the pharmacy. And let's see if I can. Okay, there we go.
So on the way down, we didn't have to do this because we were from out of town, but everybody that joined the mission that was in the Glens Falls area got together. They say, you know, go buy some cheap, old, crappy suitcases because we want you to take down all the supplies. So they bring down all the drugs, all the Lions Club eyeglasses that get donated,
So then,
lots of supplies, and then they just leave the suitcases there, or if it's a good one, they can bring it back.
and customs in Guatemala is nothing. So you just walk in with this stuff and nobody pays any attention. Oops. Okay.
I think did you miss
Yes, here's
something?
something. No?
I guess not. Anyway, the place that we were at was an agricultural school, actually, and this was also during our first day of setting up, and we had all those drugs in big bottles that we had to count out or measure out and put in little packets, because we did have a full-fledged pharmacy there. And
No interesting drugs as far as I was told.
so these are all of our volunteers, 37 of us that came down for this clinic. And
So we're all just doing prep here,
yeah,
and one day, moving all that, and then also,
this is our pharmacy all set up now.
and I would say that there were certainly more drugs in this pharmacy than if you go into Wilsonburg and go to that drugstore there. But when you see the number of clients, number of patients, you'll understand why. Let's skip one. So the first day, this is what was waiting for us when we showed up, outside the place.
Queued all the way down, and this is the front door, and it's a locked gate there for the agricultural school.
Probably 100 to 200 people lined up, I would think.
And it was almost like a festival kind of atmosphere. They were all really happy to be there. They're all in their best clothes, and this guy is set up, and it smelled so good, but I didn't dare eat it.
Well, we were, actually, just as an aside, this trip, the mission was organized very, very well, and maybe too well, because they didn't want us eating any of the local food, or if we went out walking walking. They wanted us to have a partner with us, and we had to take one of our name tag, we had two of the name tag things, give that to
One
the
of the
leaders so
leaders.
that they know the people that left. I mean,
We had to
and
go get it back from her when we got
so
back.
we kind of stayed away from food that we knew, unless we knew it was really good, because nobody wants to get sick while you're doing a mission.
I did anyway. I had Montezuma's Revenge one night, and I managed to make it there the next day, and was, you know, we have pharmacists there, so they fixed me up.
Very courageous. I mean, after what she went through the night before, I was really surprised she got on the bus and went. But here we are walking into,
Those are the front gates behind us.
to do our mission.
And there was a caretaker that lived in this little place here, and he would unlock for us every morning and unlock the clinic doors, and every day at lunch, we would leave the clinics, he would lock all those clinic doors, we would have our lunch, people could walk into town if they wanted to. We left at 12, we were back, and the doors were unlocked at 1:15 every day.
And if we were, you know, we left at noon, but there were people still waiting, and they just sit there for,
Yeah,
I mean, actually, that
people
got,
waited for hours and hours. I mean, you know, some people were walking for long distances to get there for this clinic.
one thing that people, I'm getting the impression, and one thing that people in South America are very good at is waiting. You know, so these people are all waiting just to get into.
So you see all the papers that they have. Some of them, you'll see a little white card, and those are for more chronically ill people that come back every 6 months, and they bring this card. And they'll be
It's
beat
their
up
history.
and yeah, it's
Their medical
their whole medical history is basically on that little card. And if they get cured, then they take that card away. But each day had a different color paper so that we could keep track of all the people. And we treated 1,300 people.
Wow.
In a week?
In a week. We were there, well, you know, set up one day, work a week, tear down one day.
Were you actually seeing patients, you guys?
37, we had 37 people in all, and there might have been a half a dozen people without a medical certificate of some kind.
We were called ATVs, all-terrain volunteers. So we did whatever they needed us to do. And you'll see some pictures of what we were doing here briefly. But there were all kinds of people.
All kinds of shapes and ages. You can see there's some extremes here.
What do people down there do for diabetes?
They come to this clinic.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
You give them a year's
I don't think
supply?
they got
we give them
insulin though.
they don't do it, it's a pill, it's in a pill form. They get 6 months supply. That's what was one of
Did
my
they get
jobs, was measuring out 6 months worth of,
Was it insulin though? I don't think they
no,
got
it was
insulin.
not, it was pills.
So they, you know, a lot of them die early.
But this is a pill that does manage diabetes, so look at the different colors and the outfits there. That's not Mayan, but there's one Mayan outfit right there in the center. She's standing there, that's Mayan.
By the way, diabetes is the rate is higher.
It's a really, really high rate of diabetes there.
So it looks
Because
like
everything that their diets are so terrible. They put their children to bed with coffee and sugar
in their bowels.
in their
Well,
bottles.
because they're poor, or they
Because
just
they're
don't have
poor.
access?
And ignorance too.
Poor and ignorant, I mean,
And Pepsi and a Coke in a baby bottle is normal in third world countries.
yeah.
That's their formula, Pepsi.
So it was hot and humid every day, and these people were waiting for a long time, and this lady's dressed in her pretty white dress and her aprons, and those aprons were just so cool.
It looked like from the picture that the majority of patients are female. Is that true, or is it evenly split, or is it mostly
They were
women?
mostly female, but there were whole families that were there, and there were some men, but there was a good women's clinic, and these women are there for birth control, and they are not telling their husbands.
But
Or the
there was a
priests.
real doctor in the women's clinic. He
Yeah,
was
we
a
had-
gynecologist, and
That was one of the busiest clinics.
they even
there was
had an
a women's
ultrasound
clinic.
machine.
So we had a women's clinic, we had a full pharmacy, we had pediatric clinic,
Pharmacy here, very busy.
we had, we had a local man who did, that we picked up in Cuilapa every day, that did mental health. This was nutrition and education, and in my little clinic we had this little station, the mental health station, the line that went into the Gen Med for check-in, and my little reading glass clinic, which is what I did for this.
And dental, did you have a dentist?
We had a full dental
Well,
clinic, but only for extractions and some kind of.
My job was to fluoride kids' teeth,
So he did
so I did
kids
that.
fluoride.
But I just want to say, that, like, there were, in this case here, there's a lot of translation that went on because it's a little more complex.
The girl right there with long hair in the center, she was the translator that day. We had the most wonderful group of 22 translators from a school, and this was their practicum, I would say, is they had to do some mission work to complete their degrees.
And speaking of the translation, she and I both did learn Spanish using Duolingo, which is an app, you know, for your phone.
Every day we do our Duolingo.
I did that for, I
It
did
was
it for a
helpful.
few
It really
years, and
was.
she did it for, I don't know,
A few months.
a few months, but she had 2 years of Spanish when
It worked.
Oh,
High school or
it
something.
did. I mean, it was very helpful.
Well, I had,
We couldn't have long conversations with people, but we got by.
oh yeah, it was extremely helpful. The first time I went to Guatemala about 3 years ago, I started Duolingo, and I didn't really know enough to do much. This time I actually felt like if I was traveling or eating or doing any of the normal stuff that, or talking to patients, I didn't have a translator. This was, you know, just on Spanish I learned from Duolingo. I survived, but it was only kids for me.
So this was my little eyeglass clinic, and my translator there, and we just basically held a, you know, I'd measure a foot out, put the sign there, and say, "Puede leer esta línea?" And they would say, "No," and then go, "Esta línea," and go down until we figured out what strength of reading glasses. We couldn't do, you know, real glasses, but I was very, very popular there. I mean, I had a line constantly because it was a status thing. Everybody wanted a pair of glasses. Whether they needed them or not, they wanted them.
The Lions Club provided the
Yeah,
glasses.
the Lions Club, yeah. There's the man standing there with a t-shirt and the shorts. That's Nestor, and he was our local mental health volunteer, and he's talking to Miriam, who we also picked up in Cuilapa, and she did face painting and balloon sculptures for the kids. So to keep the kids occupied throughout this she was very popular.
So they even had, what would you call him? Not exactly a psychiatrist, but it was a therapist. They even had, besides all the dental and the women's and the nutrition and the kids, pediatrics and so on, they actually had someone sitting down with the person for what, an hour sometimes?
Yeah, that was Nestor, yeah, right there.
Nice guy,
He was a very nice guy,
and pretty good English too.
very good English. He taught me more Spanish. It was nice to be down there and actually learn from the people that we were working with, because there were a lot of local volunteers that we worked with. And just more of the same. And
Everybody has glasses.
yes, and the way we would test after we would give them the glasses, they could see, these are all sewers, these women sew, and they couldn't see the sew anymore, they can't see the thread the needle. So we had needle and thread and different size needles so that they could see with the glasses if they could thread the needle.
What's the average life expectancy down there, do you know?
Well, I'll tell you, some of these ladies here, you think that they're in their 90s, and you look at their sheet, because I would sign off on every sheet that came through, and they would be in their 70s, and they look like, you know, they look like they look much older than they are, because life is rough there for these people.
She's posing to show off her new glasses.
Yeah.
Oops.
And they all have these aprons, they're all these handmade aprons, and they're so pretty. This is a little Mayan lady who spoke no Spanish, no English, just totally, and many of the Mayans don't speak. Spanish is the first language of Guatemala, But there are many rural Mayans that don't speak Spanish, and there are 22 different Mayan languages.
And they're nothing like Spanish. I mean, in other words, the grammar and everything is just totally different. So, it'd be, I mean,
Look how little she is. But I fitted her for some reading
Oh, do you
classes.
remember how old she was?
I don't know, but her daughter brought her in, and her daughter could speak English and Spanish and plus Mayan. So
Anyway, she's probably,
this was our eyeglass crew, and this was our favorite translator. He was with us for most of the week, and he was so fun. And he was Mayan, by the way. And he said, when I'm not here and I'm home, I dress traditionally. I like to dress traditionally. And he showed me lots of pictures. So Reed, his little clinic was outside on the covered, walkway outside of the dental clinic, and he had this dental chair there, and
basically I painted fluoride on the teeth. You know, not a real high-tech job. But anyhow, sometimes...
this little girl on the end, she's there watching, because I was laughing at her. She's like, what are you laughing at? That's my brother he's torturing.
But this is probably going to give a wrong impression, because I would say less than 5% were terrified. Most of them were very happy to...
Well, he had stuff for him too. He had toothbrushes, and they all wanted to come and get toothbrushes, and we had a few kids' sunglasses, so...
I had a bunch of sunglasses too.
Yeah.
They wanted those real bad.
She was not having it. She did not want anything to do with that, and he never did get to treat
You know, if they
her.
felt like this, I just wouldn't do it.
And that's outside of the dental clinic, and Miriam, no, that's not Miriam. Anyway, that's Luis. He was a local volunteer and a wheeler dealer, and if we needed anything, we asked Luis to get it for us, and he would find it.
I was just kidding around. I asked him if he could get some marijuana, and he finally said, yeah, I know a place where I can get it 3 blocks from here.
This is the dental clinic, and you can see we pushed all of the school desks out of the way and just piled them up in the corner to make room for our clinics. And the light is from the light that he's got on his glasses.
Right, he's got a very intense light on his glasses. Right.
But he was just doing mostly extractions and this painting of some.
This is the dental crew, which I guess I was considered part of. And so they had all these implements of destruction, and they had to
We
clean them
had
up.
this autoclave that nobody knew how to run, and Chris was another ATV. I'm in IT. He does the same kind of job I do in regular life, and he's just kind of this fix-it guy. So he said, really wasn't broken. You just had to read the instructions. So he became the autoclave guy. This would be probably the peds clinic.
Let's see, what is this?
That's the women's
Oh
clinic
yeah,
there.
this is the women's clinic.
And like I said, every day at lunchtime, we would lock the clinic doors, and so these volunteers are just entertaining the kids during lunch. The kids were the best part. I mean, those were the free sunglasses that we were giving out that made Reed pretty popular. And the balloon sculptures.
Nobody, I mean, it's just like puppies, everybody likes to see kids, so I put a series in here of the kids.
And that little girl, oh, she did not want me to take her picture, but I had to. She was so beautiful. The kids.
Yeah, I was trying in Spanish to tell them to
Smile.
smile, and I'm not sure at the time if I knew the sonrisa, if I knew the word for smile, so I was trying to
I think
show
he
your
said
teeth.
show your teeth, so instead of sonrisa is the word for smile. She did face painting and she was quite popular too.
Yeah, the one who was doing the face paint, she didn't speak any English, but she was around. And the kids, when they talk Spanish, it'd be this little voice that, I couldn't hear very well. And she'd at least repeat it in Spanish for me, and loud enough that I could sometimes understand.
So at the end of the week, we packed everything back up and put it back in storage. And there were a number of modes of transportation to get it from the clinic into town.
Do they have any kind of internet, cell phone service, anything
No.
like that
No.
there?
Well, no, they have the cell phones. And we had T-Mobile service, and we could do internet over it. It was slow.
Well, we could in there, but there was no internet.
And if you had a severely ill person,
We had
You
an
couldn't-
ambulance come.
okay.
We did have one case where there was a case of appendicitis. The appendix was bursting and they called an ambulance and where did it go? I don't know. I don't know where the closest hospital. Anyway, at the end of the week, we all went into town and met the mayor and were handed certificates.
And we were given a bottle of
Honey, local honey.
which was actually pretty tasty.
Mhm.
And I got my certificate there.
That's all 37 of us at the hotel on the last day. And, go back for just a second. Our two leaders in the front there were Wendy and Chung, and then right next to them is Victor, and he's the lead, the local Guatemalan leader of the whole thing. He's there.
He was
He was wonderful.
He was an engineer, mining engineer, and he had a sort of plantation of his own. He was retired from mining. But if any of you folks remember, I think it was it in Peru where the miners got stuck down and they drilled a 2-inch hole? He was actually consulted for that. So I think that's his claim to fame.
What do they have for schools?
Well, we have a picture of a school here coming up.
So these children go to school then, mostly? or not?
I'm pretty sure that, well, let's see, honestly, I don't know if they have to pay for it or not here. But if they have to pay for it, then undoubtedly there are some that don't go. This is still in the same.
So this is in Nueva Santa Rosa. When we went at lunchtime, we would walk into town, and this was part of the scene around town.
The motorcycles, 150 to 175 cc's are really common.
Lots of motorcycles.
It's spotlessly clean, not having trash on the street like you were so used to seeing in Mexico.
Well,
This
is town center
just,
right
this
here.
is the town
Oh,
center,
that's
and it's
the
clean,
thing,
but it's
yeah.
not clean. It's
Okay.
really, I mean,
Okay.
it's pretty,
There's some trash.
it's pretty trashy. So, I mean, it's all open air. I mean, all the stores are, even if they close them down at night, it's like a garage door, and they just lift them up in the day, and it's all open. But- Yeah, I mean, they would have vegetables next to, a booth with kites. And then this was a big marketplace with 2 stories and
Inside, actually.
inside, and they had I mean, just everything, and you could supposedly just rent a space there and put your goods out.
And how big a city approximately, do you know, was Santa Rosa?
It's very small.
I thought you looked it up, didn't
I
you?
did,
Was it
I don't,
41,000 or something?
Oh,
no, that was someplace else that I was looking at.
Well, I wouldn't say really small, because there are some really small towns there, but if I had to take a wild-ass guess, I'm pretty sure it was above 5,000.
So the size of Walsenburg?
mhm,
Maybe larger than that. Oh,
maybe Trinidad.
So this is like Walmart there.
Better selection.
This is like their Walmart, so whenever they had a selection of wine, so that's us picking wine out for later on.
They're eating for $2 you could get a cardboard
A
container.
box of pretty decent, it was a, I don't know, the Spanish one, Tempranillo. Pretty good box Tempranillo.
And there's these guys with shotguns all over.
And these guys are everywhere. I mean, this is an armed guard at that same store. But, you know, when we would be traveling through Guatemala, there'd be an armed guard outside of a tire store, or a bank, or a grocery store. And
Banks
you just-
definitely had armed guards.
Banks definitely had armed guards.
Furnished by the government?
I'm sure they were
I
hired
don't
by the
know.
business.
I don't think so.
They're all private.
They're all private?
Yeah.
And they may not have even had ammo in the guns, I don't know, but my theory was they had shotguns because the shotguns have limited range, yet they're pretty destructive. But, well, the military people had, actually, the military guys told me they got the guns came from the United States. And those, of course, are much greater range. So the shotguns are not much of a threat.
But
I mean, in other
ammunition
words,
was
the
hard to come by
military,
for
the
the
military,
military, though.
the military had, maintains their control and their superiority by having weapons that will have much greater range than the shotguns. So, now that's just my theory.
And that was federal, they're federal.
I'm
I mean, they're governmental.
So, us did,
No, you mean the guys that were with us were federal?
Yes.
these pastelarias were ubiquitous in all the little towns. There were beautiful cakes and pastries.
They're fairly modest people there, they even have their cats dressed up.
This was in one of the shops, and that was how they hoped to draw people in. This was actually probably affluence. A house this big, some of them live in one room with a corrugated tin roof, you know.
I just shot this because I thought it was typical.
It is typical. This is an example of, well, they call it the Three Sisters, so it's a really different way than we think of Three Sisters. We think about growing corn, beans, and squash, and starting them pretty much all at the same time. That's not how they do it there. They grow the corn, they wait till the corn is harvested, they cut the stalk, you know, about this high, then they grow the beans, and the beans grow up that stalk. And then generally, we didn't see the squash in there at all, except for around the edges. And it was that really lovely choyote squash. Oh, I love that stuff. I don't like squash, but I figured out that I do like the South American squash.
Coffee seedlings.
Coffee seedlings.
Lots of rain?
Every day.
Well, there's a rainy season.
But we were at the end of the rainy season, but every afternoon it pretty much rained. This is, go back.
Okay. For time reasons, I'm going to
This is called the forest flame.
move
and
faster
these-
through the...
These
through the-
trees, these are huge trees, and they're
Plants.
just, Guatemala means land of forest. And they have beautiful forests, and there were huge trees just filled with this orange flower. This was right outside of our hotel. And this was a plant at the clinic, and just those wonderful, out of this world kind of flower.
Yeah, it looks like it came from space or something. I
Yeah.
think those are about 6 to 8 inches or something.
They were
I mean, those, whatever
the
they
flowers
are.
themselves. A line of tuk-tuks.
I think we're in the transportation section here, so you see some modes of transportation. Tuk-tuk's like, as I said before, it's like a motor scooter with bigger, but there are 4 sources of them: China,
India,
India,
and Italy.
Italy, and maybe I can't remember what the other one is. But they all look the same, pretty much.
That's inside of one of the tuk-tuks. And it says, faith in God up there. They're very religious. And those are chicken buses. Then they're ubiquitous. And they're, when we got out to the Mayan areas, most of the streets weren't conducive to chicken buses. So they didn't have as many chicken buses there, but and that was an unusual color for a tuk-tuk. So,
They're usually red.
and they just hang off these chicken buses. I mean, they're just
Almost all the buses are embellished like this. And
everyone, you know, I think they try to outdo each other with the colorful designs.
And we think they come from the United States, you know, after a school puts 100,000, 200,000 miles on them, that they would send them over here and then recondition them. But this is the,
Once we get out to the rural areas, there aren't the chicken buses, and this is public transportation for most of my people in those outlying rural areas.
standing in the back of a pickup truck.
And there's racks on the side so they have something to hold on, and a blue tarp if it rains, that they pull over the top. And now we're getting into the Santiago de Atitlan area, and these, every morning, as soon as light hit, they were out in these little wooden boats, and
They practically all stand.
they stand and they paddle, and they're fishing, no fishing pole, it's just a line in the water, and they're fishing for these latent fish. These are mostly private, you can contract these private boats and visit all the different towns across the lake. And
What are the buildings?
that's just housing in Santiago.
Public or private?
Mostly private homes, and there's some hotels in there, but these would be more affluent.
And there might be a business in the ground floor.
Right. This is a traditional man's dress. You can tell which Mayan tribe he comes from by the colors in the sash.
This is public transportation here.
Yeah, this is I'm in that boat, and he took this picture. We took the boats across the lake fairly often when we were in Santiago, almost daily, and they had a schedule, and if you were there at 11 o'clock when you thought that the boat was going to leave, and they didn't have the boat full, you sat there until the boat was full, and then these two mothers would get you there fast, but you had to wait, and that's
Yeah,
it.
like you wait for 45 minutes and then it takes you 10 minutes to get there because that's 500 horsepower on there, you know, that's a lot. And I thought they would, I couldn't tell, I mean, but it looked to me like we were, I could have checked it with GPS, I think, but I thought we were moving along at about 35 miles an hour.
And the boats would have to be that full before they would leave the dock, and you can see some of the routes there that they went. You couldn't get to, unless you wanted to hire a private boat, you couldn't get to a lot of these towns on a public boat. So you would have to go, if we wanted to go to, which we did, we went over to San Juan, we had to take a boat to San Pedro, then we took a tuk-tuk over this dirt road, bone-jarring ride over a mountain to get to San Juan.
Are those volcanoes?
They are volcanoes, and the lake is an ancient volcano crater.
Yeah, we looked out on, I think, maybe it was, I'm not sure which one of these was actually. The map is upside down, they, for some reason, put north down. But you can get around with boats pretty well.
And every town has a different kind of flavor. I mean, Santiago was a nice little tourist town, great markets there, a great town center, and there were churches in San Pedro. San Juan was, just had wonderful weaving co-ops and chocolate co-ops and other really fun stores. And that was a dock from our casita. Got me sitting out taking a picture of them.
Yeah.
And you can see the town of Santiago in the background. This is just from our back door, basically. And that's the casita where we stayed. And you can see the gardens go from the back doors of most of these places all the way down to the lake.
We paid $195 for this place
For a week.
for a week. And it had a kitchen and, so forth, so. But it was a contact I had from 3 years ago, and the expat who was an ex-fireman, or a fireman, and he liked to rent to do-gooders. And so I made a point to mention that we were on a mission and so forth. So there's another one of our place there. They call this a widowmaker shower because as you can see, the heating is done in the shower and sometimes things go wrong and the person ends up getting toasted.
Well, and water, hot water is, you know, when we did our week of mission work, we never had a hot shower the entire time. It was cold showers. It was not fun.
This is the grounds for where we were living.
There's a lot of series, right, this is, that's an elephant ear, you know, those little elephant ears that you can buy? Look how big that is, he's hiding in there. That was a Guatemalan shirt I bought. And right next door was a place called El Bamboo, and there was a little more luxury than where we were. They had places to stay and swimming pools and a jacuzzi and all that kind of stuff. Nice restaurant with a patio, wonderful mojitos. It's just, I mean, just lush. Everything, the vegetation there was so beautiful. And we'll go really fast, but there's a lot of
But
pictures of flowers.
they had a staff taking care of this.
They had full-time gardening staff. And there was full-time gardening staff where we lived too.
So what did
A
this
garden.
What did this place cost today? Have you still stayed here?
I don't know.
This one here, if I had to take a wild guess, well, it could be as much as $100 a night, I would guess.
I would-
I really
It
don't
might
know,
be
but
that.
I know it was a hell of a lot more than what we paid.
Yeah.
But there were all kinds of nationalities. I think we heard German,
It was
French.
a very international clientele that was there, so we heard French. That's a Brugmansia, and it's as big as a tree.
They smell so good.
Bananas in people's backyards. I mean, it was just coffee plants, and that was right outside of our door, a coffee plant.
Okay, I'm gonna move through these pretty fast because we don't know the names of any of these plants anyway, so I know. But it's just, to me, it was so amazing that we, instead of cutting pictures out, culling it, we decided we'll put them all in and move fast.
I have one of those plants that's never flowered like that, ever.
Let's see, right up here, I believe that's the edge of the hot tub.
Yeah, we paid them like, I don't know, $10 to go over there and use their hot tub. Just beautiful foliage and flowers and.
How about insects and snakes?
No, very few insects.
A lot of spiders there.
Oh, really?
And, they
But
were
not
big.
there wasn't much in the way of flying and biting insects, put it that way.
There were spiders in our casita, and I shook my shoes out one morning, and a great big black spider about this big fell out and ran up the wall. And I was like, oh.
But
We
they
had
have,
a detente after that.
they
I
have
learned
guys
to live
that
with
are
them.
spraying stuff
What's that?
at this hotel. They have guys that are spraying yards all the time like that, don't you think? Did you see
No,
them? You
no.
didn't see them spraying?
Well,
Well-
they might, we just don't really know, I don't think. But the spiders in a way are not that, I mean, they eat other insects, so.
So, I mean, the things that you can see there that we buy little plants in the store are just growing in big swaths out in your yard. And that, just incredible flowers. And
What kind of elevation?
that was
5,000.
about 5,000 feet.
And apparently, you know, it was the right elevation and the right soil for coffee.
For coffee, shade room coffee is very famous in the area where we were.
You'll see
Look at that
this,
flower.
you'll see this one again.
That is almost otherworldly. Yeah, another pretty romancing. All of this is done with machete, all by hand. It's all done with machete. I mean, Adon and his son Henry were the gardeners where we stayed, and also caretakers, and they were out there every day, you know, doing something, chopping away at this.
I'm on a trail right now, this is a trail that goes by the lake into town, and it's public access. So anybody who has a place on the lake has to allow this trail to go through. I
They
think the
kind of
next,
call it the free road.
and the next series of pictures, I believe, is just along that trail, a lot of diversity, and for some odd reason, it was where lovers went to fool around. I have no idea why they would do that. Maybe
Well, it was, you know, especially on Sunday. So here's the path that goes along, some of it goes along the lake, but
There's a couple right there.
this is kind of a public pavilion, and these flowers were just hanging down in great big bunches, but they were, we sat at the El Bamboo, this is our dock, we were sitting at the El Bamboo having a mojito, and this couple of young lovers was,
I mean, they're going at it hot and heavy for at least 45 minutes. Sometimes they were horizontal, then they were up, and, you know, I guess they have no other place.
I don't think the young people have a place to go to Spark and Court, so that's where they do it, is along that path. And this is all along that path. And these are all these little wooden fishing boats that just, they're so primitive, they're just, and these are these gardens, and the house will be back there in this narrow strip, and then they'll have that long, long garden all the way down to the lake.
And I have seen, not this time, but when I was here before, they do use chemicals.
Yeah, they do, yeah. So sometimes you'd have it walled off, but the path was always there, unobstructed, and you know. And this is laundry day, every day is probably laundry day down there, but they carry that laundry down to the lake in these big containers on their head. This is just this private pavilion.
This is where they do their laundry.
This is where they bathe and they do their laundry. This, we're still debating on exactly what it is, but they were in the water in these boats, filling these boats with this seaweed, and we figure it's cleaning out so the props don't get tangled up in it, but they also use it as a high-grade compost mulch. So all the women were at the shore unloading it, and the guys would be out there in their wooden boats with grappling hooks and pulling the stuff up into the boats.
Note the hand woven wraparound dresses or whatever that all the women wear. Those are hand done on a loom, and
The men do that looming of those skirts because it's a foot loom. There are different kinds of weaving, and the women do all of one type of weaving, which you'll see later. And we don't have pictures of the men doing the weaving.
actually I do have a picture that we had from a previous experience, but so I talked to a guy who was actually doing it, and he said it took him seven days to do 7 yards, which is what the women use to wrap around.
That's how much fabric they wrap.
I can't figure out the economics of that, but
We were sitting outside a restaurant called El Pescador, which means the fisherman, and it's just, you're just sitting out there watching these life in this town. And look at how they've got that stacked up in the motorcycle.
I see a lot of that stuff. A lot of
And the ladies with the,
That's our meal that we have there.
it's the most expensive place to eat in Santiago. This was down at the dock when we got back. I was looking for some trinkets to bring to my coworkers at work, and this guy was out there and wrapping pens, and he could spell anything he wanted on there. And it took him about 3 minutes to wrap these with a name on it. And
I had some samples. One of them was F Trump with the full word spelled out.
or Love Trump, he had both. He approached us with those, and we were like, no, I don't think we want any of those, but I do want one with all my coworkers' names on them. So he spelled every one of my coworkers' names out on these pens, and it was fast, about 3 minutes each. This was down by the docks and one of the local places to eat. And you know, you take your chances with some of these places, but I wanted to go in and go back to that picture and show them something. They're so ingenious. I mean, this is all open air. You can see daylight above there, but these are cheese graters with colored plastic cups and a light bulb in them. That's their chandeliers there. And I figured out there was this lemon fizzy drink that was just so delicious, and if it's cold and it's on ice, it's wonderful. But I would order it in these restaurants and it would take, I mean, I have half my meal done before the drink would come out. I finally figured it out. They're going to buy ice cubes because they don't want to make the gringo girl sick. This was a place we were in for quite a while because I was buying a pair of earrings for my sister, and I got myself these too. And look at how many earrings they had to choose
So she
from.
was trying to buy these for her sister, and her sister's kind of choosy. So she'd take a picture and email it to the sister, and the sister would say, no, I don't like that one, try, how about this? So, you know, it's like
So we
the modern
kind of
world.
got, we were there for a while, and they got comfortable enough with us that we got to take their pictures with the kids.
And those are all handmade, right?
That's all handmade, and
beads.
poinsettias down there grow to be trees, you know, big shrubs. The coffee that you're drinking came from this place, and he was our barista, and there was an older man that we talked to, and he said that his family is actually in the coffee business, so all the coffee came from the
The older
plantation.
guy owned the place, and he actually grew the coffee that they served here and that we brought.
This is typical of the poorer population, that many of these places, when we walked through town, there are some pretty dark, narrow little alleys, and you could see into people's homes, and there would just be a room with, a place to cook and a pallet on the floor, and
This was one of the better places,
this
probably.
was actually probably nice. Here, you saw all over. They were in there pulling rocks out of the hillside, chopping them into pieces that they could build walls with by hand, and then filling those bags full of the smaller pieces. And they probably were pulling the rocks right from that wall and chopping them right there. I saw along roadsides where they were building a wall and they were just chopping the stones, perfectly nice little square stones, beautiful work, and just, they're making almost nothing to do that.
This used to be a garage that somebody turned into a restaurant. Some gringos actually turned into a restaurant, and that was when I was first there 3 years ago. It kind of came back, and I guess they'd done well enough, they decided to build it up another story or two.
Dried
we
fishes
probably
and
need
shrimps.
to move through here
Yeah,
faster. so-
This is a marketplace, typical. They had dried fishes and dried shrimps, and I think they just cook them. I tried really hard to figure out what they used, what they cook with this stuff, but I think they use it to flavor soups and stews.
And, again, I'm gonna remind you to just check out it's just really
The
cool.
garb, and the different colors indicate which Mayan tribe that they're from, the different
Those
colored
are-
flowers.
Those are called wheat pills?
They call what?
Wheat pills,
Wheat pills is the,
the tops.
oh, the tops. Oh, okay. Like this type of thing here.
Yeah, and they're all hand loomed and
Hand
embroidered
loomed and then embroidered on top.
in each village.
Mhm. This was an inside market, and they actually, we cooked. So Art would go in and pick out the things I wanted to buy, including meat that was all out in the open air.
They probably
And
charge us
and
double.
we got a bottle of Clorox, and we would wash everything in a little water. And you have to soak everything in Clorox.
Nice
This is the great shot that we got. He turned around and then turned back. Because you don't want to stick your camera in people's faces, but sometimes you get lucky, and this was one of them. One of the churches. There are many churches, and
This was on, let's see.
just before Day of the Dead. This was in San Juan. So it was just before the Day of the Dead, and they used chrysanthemums. They bring flowers to the graves during the Day of the Dead and commune with their dead relatives. And they have picnics. And this was also in a church in San Juan. Public art.
Some of it was, I don't know, it just looks like it's pretty spacey to me. This next one, get a better shot.
Cotton. This was in San Juan, going down toward the docks.
Those pictures don't really show how steep things are. This is actually a pretty steep road going
Yeah, it
down.
was steep. That's, chocolate.
Chocolate pod, it's
It's a
actually like
pod, and inside they have the chocolate, the cocoa beans.
6 to 8 inches long, actually.
Now, they had volcanoes on Atitlan. Has there been volcano active?
Didn't see
Or-
any.
No, we
Any
didn't see any
earthquakes or
there, but we
anything?
did see a volcano on the way back out.
Near Guatemala City, it was,
Ring of smoke.
it was actively, spewing stuff out, random patterns.
So here he is roasting the cocoa beans, and then this is a traditional way of grinding them, and
That's the
it was
fucking process,
delicious.
kind of
Oh
cocoa.
my gosh, it's so good. That's cotton. So they have 3 different types of cotton that they grow. One is pure white, one is in the middle of that dark color, and then,
And that's the darkest one.
yeah. And this was the co-op, and all the natural dyes behind it. We did this tour through the co-op, and she let me weave spin the thread, which then she tied on my arm, and I wore it until it fell off. And she's dyeing some there. They use beet for red, avocado bark. This is the type of weaving that women do. There were lots of little galleries where they had a lot of different art.
My theory is that this is not traditional, this is what they do for the tourists. But I was fascinated by it, so I took a couple shots.
This was in Shell, and it was a museum. They did a dive in the lake for all the artifacts that were in this museum, and this was one of the
It was
artifacts.
a big one.
Yeah, it was a really big one. This was on the street,
Pan Shell.
not Vendor. and
Pan Shell's just
Pan Shell.
another town, Pan Shell, another town on the lake, just.
And it's a little
jumping
bigger
around.
than any of the other ones that we visited.
Little kid mimicking adults by playing continuously, for like the whole time they were there, on a broken cell phone. Now school, this is a school. They weren't in school, and there was no action in school that day, but this is, so in other words, they go from class to class by walking outside, like they do in California, kind of, I guess.
The mass. This place was huge. It went forever. All those masks, they were so gorgeous, I had a hard time picking. I bought masks for my grandkids, so.
Nice.
So these were the ones I picked out for all my grandkids. And this is road construction, all done by hand. This is,
And was
This
there
was-
security here, as you had seen in Santa Rosa? Were there the armed guards?
we didn't see too much in the way of armed guards there, but when we were on the road
Yeah.
between these towns, we would see in front of more traditional businesses.
Yeah.
We would see
There's
armed
a
guards.
great big army base just up on the top of the hill from town here called Solon, where there's a giant army base, so they pretty much have everything in control.
This cafe they had little chairs and tables that matched that flower, and they were just hanging down everywhere, so it was just magical. That was not. That was on the dock. Don't eat there. Those shrimps were like not too good. It was kind of expensive, and the food was kind of bad.
Probably, maybe our most expensive meal. I don't know.
You look a little skeptical. I was. Reed had a little problem. You might want to give him a quick rundown
I'm on
on
a tuk-tuk
this.
between San Juan and San Pedro, yeah. We had to go over this bumpy ride way up and kind of on a mountain and down, and somebody else got in our tuk-tuk with us, so we had 3 people crammed in. Anyhow, my cell phone fell out on the seat, and I didn't know it till a little bit later.
When we got home.
Well, the cell phone's an expensive cell phone, plus I had all my pictures. So, I think you might have suggested, why don't you try calling it? And I thought maybe the battery would be dead by this time, but the guy answered. Well, so here,
He spoke absolutely no.
the guy I was talking to spoke no English, and I'm trying to speak to him on Duolingo Spanish. And so I was afraid that the battery would run out, so I needed to get his real phone number and his email address and various things. And so all this was going on. We pulled it off.
We
And the
pulled
next-
it off. We
next-
got him back on the
Next day, we
dock.
got on a boat, went over to where the town that he was in, and he met us at the appointed place at the appointed time.
And we gave him a big tip.
And so that was sort of a miracle.
It was. Milagro.
Well, this is, we're now at the Guatemala airport, and they have McDonald's there, Guatemala City Airport. And it's about the same as, but I have to say, one thing I hate, that I did have a hamburger, what is it, just one place or two? I don't know, but McDonald's hamburger was better.
Oh, the place on the dock, you got a hamburger. It was pretty bad.
So,
Anyway.
and that's just a picture of us, I think that's the end.
Yeah. That was the picture that we took for our driver to recognize us.
With glasses.
We're over time, but if I don't know if anybody wants to leave, I wouldn't be offended if you have some questions. I can try to tell you just very quickly a little bit about the history. I should just say that in the 1800s, but there was just constant strife, wars and everything going on. And then in the 1900s, it was the United Fruit Company that had control over everything. They were in cahoots with the U.S. I'm not remembering all the dates exactly, but I think around 1954 and a little bit beyond, the CIA sponsored, there was a guy who was doing some progress in power, and then the CIA sponsored a regime change from, into a dictatorship, and which then blew up after that, and there were
Into sort of a civil war.
yes, 200,000 indigenous people. No, there were 200,000 people ended up dead, and I think 74% or something like that of them were indigenous Mayans. And then this just went on and on. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It just seems like every year something happened again.
And the strife goes on, I believe.
But we couldn't tell. If just the way we were there for the medical thing and for our tourists, you really couldn't pick up any of that. Except for the fact that we had these guards with us on the bus. But other than that, so is there anything else anybody would like to ask?
Do you pay for your own way over there and your own way back?
Yes.
So $600, and then I think we.
Plus airfare. We paid it was $625 for the mission, and that covered our hotel and our breakfast and dinner there, and then we paid for our airfare. And yeah, basically we paid
Where did you fly into them?
Guatemala City.
We got.
From DIA?
No, we had.
We went from DIA to Texas,
Houston.
and then Spirit Airlines goes directly to Guatemala from there.
It would have been over $600, except instead of you letting the system show us how to get there,
We took separate
we
flights.
did a lot of effort to find. We
Some of the
found
cost
we
was
found a
around
flight
$300.
to.
And I have some miles.
We found a flight to Houston, and then we found that there was another one going to Guatemala City, like 2 hours later. So it took a lot of work, but it cut the expense down to about half.
About half, yeah. The only problem was I didn't realize when I made these little separate flights back and forth to Houston that Houston has like 4 different airports. So we flew into one airport and we said, "Where's Southwest?" It was like, "Oh, you have to drive about 45 minutes to this other airport." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Luckily, we had enough
We got
time.
an Uber and we had enough time to get there, so it all worked out.
There were men building the road, but I didn't see hardly any other men working. What do they do? Farm or what?
They do. It's agricultural, very much agricultural. They work in fields, and a lot of the women fix lunches, take the whole family out there, they eat lunch together right out there.
And stuff for tourists. They make a lot of stuff for tourists.
Yeah, but there's coffee, there's rubber, there's sugar cane, there's there's chocolate, there's cocoa, there's, you know,
And
bananas,
some, and
there's
some mining,
fruit. And some mining, yes,
but very poor people.
very, very poor.
Well, it's like,
I mean, to take a tuk-tuk, it's a few cents. There's guys out there, that's what they do all day long, is take people back and forth. So they're making a few bucks a day.
What do you suppose their gasoline prices are?
oh, geez, I
don't
looked
know.
at that. I didn't think they were that
Do
different.
they have an oil market, or do they bring their oil from Mexico, their fuel?
I'm not sure where they get it from, but I do remember contemplating the fuel thing, and it wasn't really that much
No, I
different
didn't
than,
think it was.
in
And
here.
you'd think the tuk-tuks using gasoline would have to charge more than 50 cents. I guess they just do massive numbers of people
Well,
to pay
that's
for
what,
their fuel.
that's what it's like in Africa too. The same thing in South Africa. A 12-passenger bus or SUV or something would have 36 people in it. Seriously.
Those
That's a regular deal.
Yeah, they use those sprinters, as she said, that, and you're right, 30, and you're packed in pretty tight. And I think what happens is they send them, after they have about 500,000 miles on them, they send them from the US and from Europe over to Africa and South Africa.
And different foreign countries.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What is their local drink? Do they make a beer that's local, or do they make some other kind of liquor?
They have, well, the local beer is Gallo.
Oh, my gosh.
That's about the only, and they have a monopoly there. We were talking with a Spanish expat, and he was in that business, and he said, there are a few little microbrews and things like that in the larger cities, but these guys have a monopoly, and you can't break into it.
So who is the ruler elite? There is a president, is
I don't, I.
Yeah,
Somebody just went into office
right
there
now.
within the last, week
Yeah,
or
I think
two.
so.
I mean,
How's the drinking water?
oh,
You
you don't
can't
drink it?
No,
You can't?
no.
Not at all.
Not at all.
I mean, after you're there for a few months and you get used to the flora and fauna that's in that water, you might be able to, but.
I wouldn't even do it
We
then.
wouldn't, you don't, if you're, everything that we bought in the market to cook, we brought home, put it in this kitchen sink with a little bit of Clorox in the water and soaked it for 10 minutes, and then we would eat it.
And sanitation, the
The-
flow from sanitation of any kind goes into the streams?
Well,
Without
the
treatment?
lake was polluted. I
The
mean,
lake is polluted.
I mean,
You
you-
don't want to swim in that, in Lake of Titlon, you don't want to swim there.
You almost don't want to eat the fish that come out of it.
I wouldn't, but they do.
Well, once you cook them, it may be
Yeah, right.
fairly safe.
yeah, if they're cooked enough.
We
Yeah.
traveled there a lot in the 90s. Thank you for sharing this, but I think what strikes me so much is nothing's changed with the poor people. I mean, that's 30 years. And
Yeah, yeah.
I could blink my eyes and it feels like we're right back,
Yeah.
right there. And the other thing I wanted to add was Lake Panajachel. When we were there, there were no fish in,
They died?
Atitlán, I'm sorry. There were no fish in it at all because back in the 40s or 50s, I think, they introduced some kind of fish that they thought was going to eat all the weeds. Well, it turned out it ate all the other fish, and you couldn't eat that kind of fish. And so they were not fishing at all, so it's interesting to see they must have done something to get the fishing back, because there were nobody fishing there several times.
Interesting, the United States has done some of the same silly things.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, everybody, Australia too. I could probably say that, well, I did a thing here on Africa, and so, because it was a solar power type trip that I was on. The Africans are absolutely, I mean, they viciously want, they would kill for solar power, you know, in their little homes or whatever.
Yeah,
Here in South America, they didn't seem to care at all about that.
really.
You know, I just thought that was gonna be interesting.
But they're still using like charcoal briquettes that they make and stuff.
Well, I don't use
Most of it is
wood.
cooking with wood.
Sticks, little sticks.
And they're
And
And
actually,
you could see up in the, as we came into Santiago, there were women out in the, and men, with piles of sticks on
It's
their
just
heads.
amazing, isn't it?
And they would sell break it up and bring it in for
They
cooking.
don't have electricity and they don't need heat.
No electricity?
There's electricity, there is electricity.
Well,
But a lot of
poor
little
people,
houses.
A lot of the little houses
When
don't.
I was here before, I helped install very efficient stoves. For the poor people, they pay equivalent of $100, a lot for them, but it was still a lot less than what it actually costs. And these are like 1 or 2 room houses, dirt floors, no electricity in them. And the idea was, and we go into a house where there'd be a bunch of rocks around the floor with sticks in it, and we put one of these stoves in, it was 3 times as efficient. So with 1/3 the amount of sticks, which is a pain in the neck. I mean, you could spend all day climbing on, because it's all deforested. You could spend a day climbing up to where the stuff is and bringing it down.
Plus they run out.
And also there's pollution. And so if you're burning 1/3 the amount, it's a good thing. And they really liked it.
They did adapt.
During the clinic, I was doing reading classes, but I also was giving out eye drops, and everybody wanted those eye drops. They would say, by the afternoon, my eyes are burning, and it's like they're living in these, basically these bubbles and unventilated, and they're cooking over these.
Yeah,
But
they're
it's
cooking
also
with
important to
open
remember
fire.
that there's the upper and middle class that's in a whole different situation.
Absolutely. And in
And
fact,
so
the
we're seeing the very, the campesinos and.
I was
What
re-
month did you go?
October. It was end of
Usually
October,
always
we came
October,
back
so
in
it's
November.
the end of the rainy
It's
season.
the end of the rainy
So you
season.
still had rain, but it
We
wasn't
did.
torrents.
I was doing a little research this morning, and it looked, I can't remember the exact numbers, but the amount of rich compared to the poor
Oh, it's.
was actually not that different in here. I
Yeah,
mean,
percentage wise.
the 1% rich, and then everybody else is way down below
And
that.
when you're way down below, you're way down.
But they were probably further down than most of the
Yeah,
people
I
in
think
the
so
US.
too.
Well, that's basically the same
Mhm.
step system in South Africa too.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, South Africa with the townships.
There's two or three different levels and then way up here.
Mhm.
And they control it.
And they control
It's
everything.
good bottom line.
It's very enlightening.
Mhm.
Does the State Department encourage travel down there now? Because there was a time when they didn't want you to go to Guatemala.
Well,
They still caution you, but I don't think they
I
try
mean, it
to
was
discourage
really-
you.
It looked really safe and nice to me.
that's the way it looked to me, too.
I mean, it's like, I don't know.
Antigua is just like Boulder.
Well, I
It's a
mean,
lot like
and there's
Boulder.
a difference between daytime and nighttime too.
And between where you go.
And where you go. If you're out, if you want to go hiking, for instance, you want to hire a guide, because there are crooks up there off the trail, and they will rob you. And if you have a guide, they won't rob you because they're from the same town and they know each other. So there's, it's like, yeah.
It's better to-
Also known as Pueblo and Albuquerque.